Hello, and welcome to the first of our conversations with recruiters. And with me today is Amanda Reuben from bijourecruitment.com. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you very much, Paula. Lovely to see you.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking to Amanda today about the best way to work with your recruiter, how to get taken on by a recruiter, headhunter, and all those sort of questions. So just to kick off, tell us a little bit about yourself, Amanda, and the sort of areas you work in, the people you work with.
Okay, so I consider myself a recruiter stroke headhunter. I don't consider myself necessarily an agency owner, although most people would, naturally assume it's a recruitment agency.
Yeah.
I work for myself. There's just me. I set up Bijou around 6 years ago after I had been working for a couple of other agencies and needed to really be doing this for myself. I was really keen to work for myself and have the clients I wanted to work with and the candidates that I wanted to choose, and really the hours I wanted to choose as well. That's important to me. It's a very competitive market. There are lots of people in this space all over the UK, without a doubt. So what is important to me is, on a personal level, is to set myself apart. And I have what I call the Bijou difference, which is really around looking at people and clients, not just for skills and experience, but all about culture fit as well, especially we're going through at the moment. The most important thing, I think, is whether a candidate is right for the client in terms of their personality fit, in terms of the culture of the business. So those things are really important to me. And those are the things that I really focus on when I talk to both clients and candidates.
Yeah. So are there any particular areas of industry that you work with?
Well, for a long time, I was working predominantly in the fashion and retail space and working with some really amazing brands. And then that began to cross over into homeware and lifestyle. And I think these days I'm more about the people than I am about the sector, because what really interests me is who works best where. So there's lots of technical roles that I wouldn't probably take on, and there's lots of certain areas of industry I wouldn't work with, but generally I like working with small owner-managed businesses where I have a really good relationship with the owner, because everything I do is relationship-led. It's really, really important. Yeah. So I would say I'm probably a bit sector agnostic these days, because it's just about having a really good relationship with the people I'm working with.
Yeah. So yeah, talking about relationships then, obviously you work for yourself, you're not representing the whole of the recruitment industry, but any tips on how one might approach a recruiter such as yourself?
Yeah, I think there's lots of different ways. And I think what's interesting is, and I've noticed in the last couple of weeks as I've got busier, is because the market is so flooded with candidates right now, people on furlough who are nervous, obviously many people in London, is how the candidates are noticing the quality of their communication has to be better. So in the past, I might advertise a role on any jobs board and people will respond, and then generally they obviously wait to be responded to back from me. But what I've noticed in the last couple of weeks is how many people are taking the time to follow up that initial application. They're actually taking the time to telephone and leave really nice, polite messages. They might then reach out, connect with me on LinkedIn as well. So I think standing out at this particular time is really, really important in a good way.
Yeah.
Did that answer the question?
Yeah. Or I suppose that initial contact, is it all about waiting until you see a job, or can you approach a headhunter stroke recruiter and say, look, here I am, consider me?
I think you can do both. I think I often get people referred to me from, a friend of a friend, or can you help my mate, or, you were really helpful to me, I've got this friend, or so I get lots of different ways of people approaching me. And I'm really, really happy to talk to everybody, because I think everyone deserves that conversation. And again, if I come back to my own personal values and wanting to set myself apart, I don't wait till I have a job on my desk in order to have a conversation with somebody, because it's a two-way street. I don't know, that person may have some, we can be useful to each other. So it's about coming back to this whole relationship, because I want everyone to have had a really positive experience of working with Bijou. I may not find them a job, because obviously I see many, many more candidates than I have jobs, but I just always want someone to feel they've had a good experience. So people contact me randomly. They contact me via my website, via LinkedIn, they get referred to me, and invariably I will, if I don't maybe talk to everyone. I will certainly have an email exchange with people. And often I have to be really abrupt maybe, or a bit brutal, and say, listen, I'm really sorry, this isn't my area of core competence, but I will always then refer them on to somebody else that I know. And people often approach me at the beginning of a career search and they're really not sure where to go, or they might need signposting. And so I work with other friends and colleagues who are more in the coaching space, and I'll often refer that way. So I guess what I'm saying is I would want anyone to feel they can approach me however that may be, and that there's always a conversation to be had.
Yeah. So what would you say the main differences would be with working with, you know, someone like you who works for themselves, and maybe one of the bigger agencies, the national agencies?
I think the larger national agencies don't tend to be as relationship led as I am. I think that they will often only speak to a candidate if there is a job that can be filled. I also think they use a lot of AI and technology to identify, you know, the whole keyword searching.
Yeah.
I won't like that at all. I'm much more, and it comes back to what I said about the culture. So I'll look at a CV and I'll know very quickly if that particular person is going to be a good match for my client based on how, you know, the brands they work with. So I think A, it's about relationship, B, it's about whether there's a job on the table at that point. I think the other thing that I do, which you know, when I have the time certainly, is that I'm much more proactive in how I work with candidates. So if somebody came to me and said, oh, you know, I really fancy working for ABC brand, I might know someone, and there I would speculatively try and create a conversation between the candidate and the company. So I think I have the time and the resources and the to be a little bit more proactive than I think the larger agencies are able to be.
Okay. So if you're working with someone, what are the best ways that they can help you help them find work?
That's a really good question. So things that I'm really, really strict about are, and it seems so obvious, but it's remarkable where this can go wrong, things like typing, typos, grammatical things, a CV that doesn't flow, i.e. it doesn't, you know, the dates might not match up, or there's a big gap, or they just haven't paid attention to the detail in that CV. And especially, as I say, at the moment where you've really got to stand out. So whilst you can ask 10 people's opinions and you'll get 10 different answers about a CV, you know, I think there's a standard format. There's you know, your personal details at the top. There's a little what I call the sales pitch profile, you know, who you are, what you can do, which should always be in the third person, incidentally, or in a kind of passive way. And then quite often it's quite a good idea to list maybe 3 to 5 key skills that you've amassed over the years, and then a chronological order of where you've worked. Education, probably not so important unless it's crucial to, you know, if you're an accountant and you've done your CIMA or your ACC, that's important. And the other thing personally I like to see is something that tells me something about that individual. Maybe they've run a marathon, or maybe they do some charity work or volunteering. Again, for me, those things are important. For lots of people, they're not, but that tells me something individual, and everyone is an individual and everyone has something to offer. And I think people tend to lose confidence around things like that, but those things are key. It also is an opportunity for me then to, when I'm maybe pitching that candidate to a client, is to say, oh, by the way, you know, they're really sporty, or they like cooking, or so personally I think those things are important. So what they can do to help me, Paula, is just to be really, really succinct, concise and accurate on a CV.
No lies and gaps.
No lies and no pictures. Absolutely. No sexy brands, no sexy logos and, you know, design elements, unless obviously the job is for a graphic designer or something. But a normal, you know, regular job, no, nothing sexy. Just has to be. But a good modern contemporary font is also important. You know, none of your Times New Roman. We're over that.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. And obviously, you know, there will be gaps when they don't hear from you and so on. Is it the done thing for people to say, oh, just nudging you, I'm still here, or does that, you know,
it's
get
again, No, it depends. It's often it's about the manner in which, or the language as someone might use in an email. I don't really mind, because I think if I was a job hunter, I'd probably do exactly the same. I think if you feel that a job has, and I said this to someone yesterday when they were applying direct to a role, if you feel that job absolutely has your name on it, that you know that job is made for you, then of course chase me. But also the way I work, if someone is right for a role, they'll be straight in front of my client, because I work for myself. Everything I do, if I don't have the candidate, I don't get paid. So a good candidate will get in front of a client if there's a job there. But if someone sends me a CV, or randomly or otherwise, I will always respond. And I may say, give me a few days. Generally, if they don't hear from me, I would like to say to people, if you don't hear from me, it's not because I've forgotten you. It's that I never forget anybody. It's because I don't have anything. I don't have an update. And I know recruiters often get accused of leaving candidates in the dark or never responding to calls. I'm absolutely not that person. And in fact, I once did a very angry rant on LinkedIn about it, because so I think what I want to put out there is I'm not that person. I will always respond, because it's common courtesy. It's absolutely common.
Yeah. And is it the etiquette? Can somebody, be working with a smaller agency or person like you and approach the big ones, or is it better to concentrate on a few people and build up that relationship?
I think if you're sector specific, let's say you want specifically to work in the fashion sector, there are lots of recruiters within the fashion space, and I think people tend to know who they are, or accountants or whatever. I do not expect people to work exclusively with me. Absolutely not, because especially today, I think we have to have as many elements in our armory as we can. So I would always encourage people. What I tend to be is maybe a little bit controversial, and I would say to people, generally stay away from the very big agencies. If having a personal contact is important, then don't do that, because it probably wouldn't happen. So I would tend to go for the small to medium sized ones, where you can have a relationship. And I always say, I don't expect to be, like I said, the only person they're dealing with, and I would actively encourage people to be, whilst not have a scattergun approach, to certainly be targeted in their job searching. Probably, again, stay away from adverts on large jobs boards that may have been advertised by an agency, because in my experience, the communication tends to fall into a big black hole. So I think be, as I said, targeted in what you're doing. Think about who you want to speak to. One of the things I always tell people is get onto LinkedIn, think about companies you might want to work with, and approach people. Always have a message. Don't just make a connection. Have a message, have a purpose. Don't ask for a job, ask for a cup. This is my little secret tools. Ask for a cup of coffee, ask for a chat. So I think, yes, talk to as many people. When you're looking for a job, you want to be strategic and talk to as many people as you can.
Yeah, a lot of people out there are quite willing to help as well, aren't they?
Very much so at the moment. Very well, I think people are generally, but even more so at the moment.
Yeah. So obviously looking for a job is often not an easy process at the best of times. So at the moment, as we've mentioned, it is quite difficult out there. Have you got any tips for, on resilience and stamina and, just staying positive and motivated?
I think it is hard. I know it is really, really tough out there. And don't be fooled by anyone who says, there's loads going on, because there isn't. And it is a very competitive marketplace now more than ever. I've had phenomenal responses to jobs that I've advertised recently, where normally I wouldn't get such a great response. So I think get someone on your side, find a friend, whilst you're job hunting, whether it's a recruiter, whether it's a headhunter, whether it's, whoever, it doesn't really matter, an HR, and just find someone who's got your back. Accept that it is going to be tough, but also most people are marketable, but you might need to just make yourself more marketable in a way you hadn't considered before. So be open to conversations, be open to some constructive criticism. I told someone last week, to make some changes to their CV, and they got a bit shirty about it. And I thought, well, I'm just trying to help you make yourself more marketable and attractive to that employer. So I think just be aware that it is tough and it is going to take time, but ultimately, you know, you'll find a job. You may, and I think the other thing actually that's really key here is be prepared to make a compromise. Necessarily on salary, because I think that raises all sorts of other questions, but you know, don't be really set on something. You know, be open to something being a bit different, maybe another 20 minutes journey commute, although obviously no one's commuting anywhere at the moment. But just be open to compromise, think a little bit more strategically and openly, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned about nobody commuting, so I'm guessing a lot of the interviews that you're arranging at the moment are Zoom interviews.
Every single one. I do. I mean, you know, might have a socially distanced coffee with someone if they're local to me, but yes, everything is over Zoom.
Yeah, it's quite interesting how everything has changed so much in the space of a few months.
Dramatically. And actually, someone told me this recently. The thing about Zoom is that when you are with someone face to face, you tend to, you're kind of maybe writing something down, or you're sort of half listening, or kind of making up what they're going to say. What I've understood, and you probably know this from your work as well, is that when you talk to someone or interview someone over Zoom, you're focusing and listening and watching them so much more that you actually get much more out of it.
Yeah, so that can be good and bad for interviews.
Yes, I think it's probably very nerve-wracking. So here's a hint actually, to have an interview on Zoom with an employer. And so my advice there would be to just do some practice, talk into the screen yourself, you know, always have your questions prepared for the employer, always think about what you think they're going to ask you, you know, obviously do your homework. Everyone should do their homework, but yeah, practice talking to the screen, or you know, do some run throughs just to see how, and also set up your screen so that your background is set and the lighting is right and you want to come across in the best way.
Yeah, no, good advice. And yeah, if you've got an interview for a job that you really want, or any job that you want, you know, actually doing that practice and making sure that all looks good, because you're going to, you know, if you get it, you're going to be representing them, aren't you? So they obviously want someone that thinks about these things.
Yes.
Brilliant. Well, actually, that's been really useful, Amanda. Lots of tips there for thinking about how to approach recruiters, how to work with them, yeah, what you can do to help them. Brilliant. Thank you. So, yeah, all your details will be below this. Thanks for today.
Thank you. Thanks, Paula.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.